Hey guys, Mozu with Negron Tech here, and I am bringing you my Lightning Elemental Shaman. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about a Shaman, I really always think about the archetype when it's a melee, kind of a Spellblade, right? But for a Shaman, unlike the Mage, Heavy Armor, Spellblade, you're kind of like, and again, I think last Epoch does a good job, but you're a Primalist, right? You're one attuned with nature, more of a Barbarian who is attuned with the elements of nature, the wind, and especially lightning. I don't want to talk about WoW, but the enhancement shaman, it's a very cool archetype. So when I think about a melee shaman, I think about a melee warrior, lightly armored, fast, but is infused with lightning and is very capable in melee while utilizing lightning elements. So that's the theme of the build. I wanted to make a pure melee playstyle that jumps in there, leap slams in there, gets right in the thick of battle, and is able to survive while using elemental damage, lightning specifically, to supplement our damage and playstyle, right? And that's what you're seeing here. I do apologize, I really don't have a script for this. I'm back to work, so I'm kind of just winging this. But another big thing about the shaman is the spirit wolves. You have lightning shamans, you're one with nature, and you have your trusty wolf companions with you. And I think it's such a cool archetype and playstyle, and in last Epoch there really isn't a lot of melee shamans, and I'll be honest with you, I've tried so many different builds when it comes to lightning earthquake. I tried a pure Tempest Strike, it did not work too well. I tried more of a hybrid totem and melee playstyle, which this is kind of like my final version. I don't think it's gonna be the strongest version, but long story short, ever since I think it was Saturday and I had to rebuild my PC, I've tried every which way of shaman that's a melee variant, not casters, and this is pretty much what I cooked up. And I think this is by far the best variation of a melee shaman without heavy investment. You'll see my gear sucks, my life sucks, my resist aren't even capped, my critical avoidance isn't even capped, and I'm just relaxing in T100, 100 T level 100 monolith. So it's not hard, it's not crazy, right? This level of these level 100s, the monoliths, especially as 87, excuse me. But it's just, I'm just trying to give you a playstyle, a very quick overview. And this is a very fast, fun. It's probably, I'm not gonna compare it to my warlock visually, but the aesthetics of a pure lightning shaman where you have storm bolts all over the battlefield, it's just so goddamn beautiful to me. Like it really is. And I gotta tell you guys, I really love it. So let me get out of this map or monolith real quick and we'll get right into the build. Alright, so for the build, again, I talked about the theme, I talked about what I wanted to do. Again, it's GIGACHAD melee, not really, but I kind of just love the idea of a strong melee character. It's always my preferred playstyle when it comes to really any RPG, not just action RPG. So let's talk about the skills. Again, guys, I've tried every single thing that you could probably imagine when it comes to melee shaman. I tried pure Tempest Strike, I tried pure Gathering Storm, I tried so many things, and every variation just seemed really weak. I'll say that a pure Tempest Strike lightning with not Gathering Storm but Warcry, just pure melee damage, relying on the Tempest Strike as your only damage and the wolves and the Storm Totem to supplement you with plus damage. It felt very good just cruising in monoliths, but the single target was so bad that it was impossible to recommend. But again, for this build, we are a pure melee Tempest Strike character, but there's a twist, because all our damage is actually gonna be Stormbolt. All our damage, our primary focus is gonna be Stormbolt, and it's very strong. Everything we do is with the intention to increase our DPS by using Stormbolt. Now, what is Stormbolt? It's pretty much a lightning bolt, single target, even though it strikes an area, but it's a very small area, and it scales with just your spell, your lightning, area for the increased area, stuff like that, but we ignore that, and attunement. The attunement is the biggest thing to talk about, because like my warlock build, and like a lot of other things in last Epoch, which is very nice, your stats are very important. So we are an attunement stacking build, because what we get out of it is an overall increase to every single part of our build. Our Entombment increases our melee damage. It increases the Tempest Strike damage. It increases the Stormbolt damage. It increases the Gathering Storm damage, even though we don't Gathering Storm. It buffs our Lightning Wolves because they get increased damage and survivability with Attunement. Like, again, the Lightning, the Spirit Wolves. I love this node because it's such a Shaman node. I mean, it's literally called Shaman's Bob, but it makes a lot of sense. So it buffs our Spirit Wolves. It buffs our Totems. And even though we are not a minion focused build, we still incorporate the wolves and the totems. Long term, I think you can sacrifice either the totem or the wolves. We'll talk about that in a bit. But again, every single thing we do is buffed with Attunement. The only thing Attunement doesn't give us is like survivability, but you know, no big deal. We also do get max mana, and now I'll get into the skills, talking about how we actually never cast Gathering Storm and we still generate Stormbolts, because the biggest issue with Stormbolts is that how do we generate it? How do we generate Storm stacks and then expend the Storm stacks? Because everything about Gathering Storm, it's kind of like they want you to do a 1-2 punch where you stack up Gathering Storm, which feels very bad because you need a significant attack speed investment from weapons and nodes. We don't really get that in this build because we don't need to. Now, there's one key thing here when it comes to Gathering Storm, and that is Friends of the Tempest. If you have 1 to 15 Storm stacks, your minions' lightning skill hits have a chance to grant you a Storm stack. That is nutty, but I will say something real quick before I move on. This can be converted. So if your Stormbolt is physical or cold converted, then your friends that do, let's say, your Thorn Totem, or Thorn Totem or Lightning Totem that's converted to cold. Where is it? I think it's right here. Now those are going to give you Storm stacks too. I haven't tested either or because, again, my core playstyle, I want to be a melee Lightning Shaman. I will say, though, again, just real quick, going to physical Armor Shred is probably the Corruption Pusher, probably the best variant of the build, because you can get the idols that give you on-hit Thorn Totems. You spec it to Thorn Totem instead of Storm Totem, for example. You get metric F-ton of Thorn Totems. You can even go Upheaval Totems too, just to get more fixed totems, and then you can do some shenanigans with increased damages with all the totems and tankiness. And is this... No, there should be a spell damage node. Yes, increased spell damage because this is Stormbolt per active totem. 8 times 4, for example. Like, you can get 8 totems up, right? So that node becomes kind of ridiculous with totem stacking. That is probably the best variant of the build, but for now, in the lower corruptions, as I level up, I'm only 87. So maybe if I get to like a level 195 plus, I'll try that out. But how does this work? So again, we are lightning focused. Our Storm Totem hits and our Spirit Wolves, our Summon Wolf lightning focus is going to generate Storm stacks. And the only negative is that it caps out at 15 Storm stacks. But what you're going to do, as you saw in the playstyle, you walk up, you Gathering Storm once, you give your minions a little bit of time, and then you just go to town. And you can literally never expend your Storm stacks because your Wolves and your Storm Totems, just remember, keep reapplying your totem. It lasts 8 seconds, I believe. Yep, 8 seconds. So every 6-7 seconds, reactivate your totem. I am using dual wield uniques that give you another 15-second cooldown Storm Sprites. That's nice. So, make sure when that is not on cooldown, you actually get those. You see, we get 4 per weapon, so we get 8 total. It's very nice. But they're going to generate your Storm stacks for you. So you just Gathering Storm once or twice. You let your minions attack for a second, and then you just go to town with Tempest Strike. And you generate your Storm stacks that way. So the Gathering Storm tree, everything is going to be, besides Friends of the Tempest, even though that's included, that's the most important node. Then we just do things that are going to generally buff Gathering Storm. Do not get nodes that give you more melee damage to Gathering Storm. It does nothing for our Stormbolt DPS, right? So melee damage to shock doesn't affect the Stormbolt. This node right here, Concentrated Storm. Gathering Storm deals more damage. It is not singular in saying melee. So what happens is that, I'll just show you right here, 10,210 DPS. If we take a node out of that, you see it went down, right? So as long as it says Gathering Storm in and of itself, the whole skill does more damage, it will apply to Stormbolt. Very good. This node does not work. I have tried Tempest Weapon because that would be kind of nutty. And, you know, again, this is melee attack, but one other thing that we go here is the mana consumption. The way I go Tempest Strike is I get rid of everything. Every Tempest, because this actually does consume a good amount of mana for single target. For your general monoliths, you will never, ever, ever go I think if my gear gets a little bit more specialized, the build gets a little stronger, then single target the bosses, you don't have to worry about this. But this is an awesome, awesome node, because as an attunement stacker, we get a lot of max mana. We get 338 mana with 0 investment besides attunement stacking. And we attunement stack anyway because it buffs everything. It buffs all our damage, especially Stormbolt, because it gets the flat damage per attunement. So what does this do? Current mana consumption is 1%. So for 1% mana consumption on our Stormbolts, we get per 10 mana 3%. So what does that mean? Okay, so let's just make it simple. We got 100 mana. So we got 100 mana. 10 times 3 is 30. So for every 100 mana, we get 30% more damage on Stormbolt, right? And it only consumes 1%. It doesn't consume our whole mana pool. So for 300 plus mana, we have over 90% more damage on Stormbolt, which is kind of nutty, guys. You know, that's very, very good. Everything else in the tree, we just get more Stormbolt damage. And that's really, really it. I think one thing interesting is that maybe World 1 Tactics could be viable, especially because we do have pets and we howl a good amount, not too long of a cooldown. The more melee damage is nice, but we really don't worry about that. Alright, so let's talk about Tempest Strike. We're back to that. The most important things about Tempest Strike is Sky Opener, right? Because now we get our pets, we get our wolves and our Storm Totem to generate those storm stacks, and then we just expend them. We expend them really, really quick, and because we have Ancestral Swiftness, and we get rid of every Tempest, we get massive attack speed with no investment. You see my weapons, you see how fast we attack, and I have no attack speed, right? So it's very, 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 very good. The other good thing is that I did switch chests, so I gotta get my 2 points in here, but you're gonna max out Gladiator of Lagoon, which is nuts. Not only does this help our Wolf and our Storm Totem, but it's a shared spell damage buff that will stack. You will probably get over 10 stacks easily, and it can get really, really high because we have so much attack speed. So what's going to happen is that every stack, at max, we're going to get 4. We don't just get 4. Our Wolves get 4, and our Storm Totem gets 4. And you might be thinking, and again, I don't have a lot of experience in the last Epoch, so I had to really experiment everything. Your Wolves do benefit from the spell damage. So your Wolves are good at Stormbolt, right? And they benefit from Stormbolt on hit, retaliation, and they're doing more spell damage, right? So they benefit from the spell damage because our Wolves are increasing DPS by providing us the storm stacks and then casting storm bolts on their own that are affected by our Gathering Storm tree. So when the Wolves cast Stormbolt, they have the ability to cast another one, and they get the more damage multipliers. It's very, very, very good. And then, of course, you know, Storm Totem is a spell, so that does get the shared spell damage. But very, very huge node, very important because it buffs up all sorts of our DPS and just more and more flat damage. You know, you're getting at a minimum 40 plus flat damage to your Wolves, your Storm Totem, and yourself. So that is incredible, right? So what else is there to talk about? That's pretty much the skill. That's how it works. Gathering Storm once or twice, relax for a second, and go to town with Tempest Strike. That's it, guys. It is super simple. You don't have to really worry about howling because our DPS, melee DPS is not that important, but the Frenzy is nice for the increased attack and cast speed and the 25% more melee damage. But again, our primary source of damage is Stormbolt. Now, talking about scaling the build, and we'll look at gear, the most important things are increases of lightning damage and attunement. We want to generally increase all sources of our damage, so attunement and lightning damage is gonna help us in that regard. We don't want to go too focused on either increasing melee, definitely not melee. If you have increased spell damage, it's not the worst thing, but we really want to generalize it to attunement, elemental damage. One note about this is that the rolls on General Ellie are lower than pure lightning and other elements, so this is not a good ring. Again, my gear is doggy, and it really, really sucks. My health sucks. My resistances aren't capped. Crit avoidance, I got a lot of work to do. But I will try my best to push this build. But again, generally we want increases of lightning damage. The melee attack speed is not too important. And attunement. So let's talk about the weapons real quick. Tempest Maul It's a very common weapon, at least in my opinion. Again, I haven't played last Epoch exclusively. I've only played 2 weeks before release. But let's see. I think it's in this one. Yeah, so I got 3. I've actually have 1 more, but I just got rid of it. But I got a good amount of Tempest Mauls, and getting a Tempest Maul with Lego potential, and then you just, you know, smash it and try to get really, really, like, this increased lightning damage is huge, right? It's absolutely massive. But again, getting plus flat melee damage to lightning is not too huge, but the spell lightning damage is huge, because this is going to help us with our storm bolts. Like you'll see here, we'll just do this. 9592, you get rid of that. And it got gutted. The Stormbolt damage got gutted. So you see how much the combination of increased lightning damage, flat spell, and this even gives the attunement, how important that is for Stormbolt damage. These might be best in slot for lightning variant. I'm not sure what the end game would be for melee. You know, maybe just definitely not the Crescent Axe base, but another increased physical base. And that would probably be best. But again, I'm focused on lightning. So that's what you want to focus on. And then obviously your defenses. There are some nodes when it comes to like, you get plus melee, you get increased spell, minions increased spell. I think that's actually excellent. So that is another note here. And then talking about the passive tree, I got work to do. I really don't know the best option. I haven't really min-maxed the tree because I've been going back and forth non-stop trying to get what's it called? Trying to get different builds, like the Earthquake variant I tried. Like, you focus on Earthquake and then you just regain mana with Tempest Strike. I've tried that. It didn't feel too good. But for the passive tree, we'll start with the Shaman. I just try to get as tanky as possible. Get both huge armor nodes. And then we get all the attunement and spell damage. Because, again, our primary focus is spell damage. Any spell damage that is spell damage and increase minion spell damage flat is very, very, very good. Again, here we get the spell damage and the melee damage, but more importantly, we get a bonus to cast Stormbolt when hit. We are going to be in melee, we are going to get hit, so we get value out of this. We get value out of casting Stormbolt. Again, you're going to practice. This has a 1 second cooldown, so don't think you can giga stack attack speed and then get the full benefit of this. It does not work that way. And then, of course, we also just get more Stormbolts having a chance to cast again. And that's a 20% chance to double cast. And then we also get... Where is it? For rare and boss, we get another 20%. So a 40% chance to cast double cast Stormbolt. Very, very, very good. And, you know, again, with the tankiness, the armor, we get a lot of free armor. Attunement, spell damage. We don't want to go too heavy into the melee attack lightning. We're not worried about that. Melee elemental, not worried about that. We just utilize that to get further in the tree for the Stormbolts. Attunement, mana regen is very important because, again, in single target scenarios, every 1% you're gonna expend a metric crap ton of Stormbolt stacks, and you're gonna have no problem maintaining the stacks with just these 3 minions, guys. Like, it's very, very, very good. So even with all this, like, the mana regen is very important, and we get so much attunement that it does help a lot. So talking about Beastmaster, the most important note here is going to be the less damage taken from nearby enemies. This is absolutely massive. 1 point for aspect of the board. This probably should be utilized a little bit more. Getting more aspect of the board duration. More points into here. Melee damage leaves life. Again, we're in melee 100% of the time. And this build does lack survivability. Not a hardcore build. I am thinking about different ways to increase survivability. The best way to probably do it is a low life variant where you utilize Berserker plus your endurance threshold. So the way endurance works is that the endurance threshold is 416. If I'm at 416 health or lower, I get the endurance percentage as damage reduction. So increase the endurance threshold, max out your endurance, which I think is 60. It doesn't say here, but I think endurance damage reduction is 60. But imagine 60% damage reduction plus your low life damage reduction plus your damage reduction from nearby enemies plus your aspect of the board plus all the armor you get, right? And if you max out crit avoid and resist, a low life variant would be crazy. But that does require uniques like Exsanguous, I think it is. Let's see if I got any. Yeah. But, you know, I kind of, I don't like making builds that are unique, reliable. This build does not need the Tempest Mauls, but they are massive, massive damage increases, especially if I can get a really good Tempest Maul with 2 or 3 legendary potential. That will be disgusting, and that's definitely probably the best in slot, but that's pretty much it. Mostly with Negron Tech here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Just give you a quick update. I will give you another more in-depth video in the future that has more editing and more, at least it's easier on the eyes and ears to listen to. So again, if you guys enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe. If not, no big deal. Again, I hope you guys appreciate the content and have a good one.